Everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're just going to be doing a preview of what will probably happen on patch 10.4. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out a ton. Be sure to check out the stream as well. It starts most nights around 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually goes till about 2:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's a very chill, friendly community. We'd love to have you. I always try to be as interactive as possible with the chat, explaining decisions that I'm making in the game and fielding any questions or comments that people might have in the chat as well. So come on by. It's a great community. And check out the rest of the content as well on the channel. I do tier lists for every patch. Then I have a coaching session playlist, individual champion playlist, topical playlists, like how to macro better, how to micro better, lane management, all kinds of great stuff. Hundreds and hundreds of videos on the channel. So just be sure to check all that out if you want to learn some more. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. Now, this is what's, like I said, proposed for patch 10.4. So all of these may not go through, but it's highly likely that a lot of these are going to go through. And I'm using this Twitter because that's what Riot's been doing lately, is putting the Twitter up on Surrender at 20. Now, what's actually on the PBE is usually what gets covered, but sometimes they mention stuff on the Twitter that's not on the public beta environment, the PBE. And usually the Twitter is more accurate. So that's what we're going to be doing for this one really quick. So remember, it is speculative. Most of this will probably go through, but sometimes they do stuff that doesn't go through. And I'm going to try to make this video quicker as well. I just have to start doing that just to try to grow the channel. It needs to be, 20 to 30 minutes probably at the absolute max. A lot of people, especially that haven't, been initiated in the channel, really don't like the hour-long video. So we got to do that a little bit faster. And if you do want faster videos as well and you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget that you can just click the little cog button and speed it up to about 1.5 times. You can probably still get the gist of most of it. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So the Bomby Cinder buffs, good. I think that tank champions in general are a little bit underrepresented. And I am taking care of my daughter today. She was watching some cartoons in the other room, but she might come in here. Rory, you want to sit in your seat? What's going on? Oh, did you mess it up? Okay, let me fix this real quick. She messed up the... Okay. You want to take that back in the other room, Rory? We'll get some breakfast here in a second. Okay. Let her watch some cartoons when she gets up in the morning. Then we're going to go probably do a little shopping later today. Anyway, sorry about that. Okay, so Bomby Cinder, yeah, I think anything that buffs up the tanks is probably a good thing. I think a lot of tanks are kind of on the cusp of becoming a little bit more viable. Obviously, Ornn has been more viable lately, but, some of the other champs are kind of lingering around, but you still don't see engaged champs enough. And I personally think it would be really nice to see some engaged tanks out of other roles other than support to diversify the meta a little bit more. It's been Leona Nautilus for like the last 8 months or so it'd be nice if we could get some other stuff in there. I know that they have been buffing the enchanters as well a little bit, but I think the best thing they could do overall for the meta is just like make tanks a viable option in the jungle and in the top lane. Okay, so this goes towards it. It's kind of weird how they're doing it. They have like this, once every 10 seconds, so at the start of a fight, you can basically get this explosion if you have an immobilizing effect, which almost every tank does. But it's only gonna do like maybe like 50 damage or something AoE, which is okay, but it's not like a huge deal. And it does do I don't think they otherwise change the amount of damage around you. I think that's pretty much the same. They just added on this little bit of extra burst, so that's okay. I mean, that does help you wave clear a little bit too. It doesn't say it has to be against champions, so you could use some kind of immobilizing effect on the big raptor or whatever and do some extra damage to the raptor camp. So that's probably when it'll be most useful, is for extra wave clear, but good little change there. The exhaust buff, I really like that. That does help out against assassins quite a bit. And exhaust has been really underpowered for a long time because Ignite got buffed a while ago, and exhaust doesn't stop Ignite damage in the bot lane because Ignite's true damage, so it doesn't reduce it. And there's just really, you kind of have to take Ignite if you're going for lane, or if you're, that's pretty much it as support. You pretty much have to go Ignite, like 99% of the time, right? As AD carry, you have a couple of options. You could go heal, teleport, sometimes cleanse. But yeah, hopefully this will allow a little bit more exhaust. So this is really going to nerf assassins a bit, because now people are going to be running more exhaust in the bot lane potentially in certain matchups, particularly where you don't think there's going to be a lot of kill pressure where it's just either a farm off lane or you're actually going to be behind in the laning phase. So this is going to be a buff to champs that don't want to all-in kill. So like your Jannas, your Sona, Soraka, stuff like that are really going to like this exhaust change. You're still obviously going to want to take Ignite on things like Nautilus, Leona, probably Rakan, and things like that. But the extra half a second really does matter in a lot of situations. So that's nice. Add a little bit more diversity. Anything to suppress some of the damage that's kind of out of control with some champions in the game right now is a good thing. Okay, phase rush. So now you have 4 seconds between attacks instead of 3. Usually the champions that run phase rush get this off pretty quickly, so that probably doesn't matter too much. But the extra speed is nice, the extra 5% movement speed, so it's a nice little buff for champs that like this. There aren't a ton of champs that get this. Sometimes Cassiopeia, I still personally, I mean, it depends on if you're smurfing or not, and like what the enemy team comp is, but I think a lot of times still going Conquer on her is really good. But people do go phase rush on her, especially at higher elo brackets, and particularly if they have a lot of dive. They have something like an Olaf or a Darius or something like that running at you. Getting that extra movement speed could be more beneficial than doing a lot of damage. But if you're at lower elo brackets, just getting a lot more damage out of the Conquer and getting the more sustained health is probably a better deal. So it's okay. Rise, I think I said Rise would obviously like this. I'm trying to think of who else would run phase rush. There's a couple other champs. Those are the two main ones that I would think of. Okay, Hail of Blades, time between attacks. Now you have 3 seconds to trigger it instead of 2 seconds between attack. Once again, people are probably, it's not going to matter too much, but it could in some situations. The cooldown is 4 seconds out of combat, period, versus 8 seconds. This says in or out of combat. Now, on the, when I was looking on the PBE, it did not say in combat. If this is 8 seconds in combat, that's actually pretty good, because you might be able to get this off twice in a lot of fights. Because the problem with this is, like, typically you would only get this off 1 second or like one time in a fight, and so you just almost always want lethal tempo unless it's a champ that's like gonna kill somebody in 3 auto attacks. But now this will help out if you can get this multiple times in a fight. That would be good. Maybe it only gets triggered against champions, so you couldn't trigger this like in the jungle. I don't know. Maybe someone like a Vayne. Vayne used to try this out and do all right with it back in the day. You'd go like Ulti Hunter Vayne. But I don't know. People have been doing PTA on Vayne lately, but maybe this with someone like Vayne might like to trigger it multiple times. I'm trying to think of who else. There's a few other champs that are probably like this that have like little 3-hit combos. Legend Rune nerf, so stacks. So to 4 per minion. And that's alright. That's a really good rune anyways. It's kind of niche. Supports are still getting that some, I guess. So maybe that's going to be a nerf to people who want the presence of mind. Legend tenacity on like Rakan. Some people do that. I don't think you're seeing that on a lot of supports. But on things like Cassiopeia likes that. Rise likes that. The presence of mind, like the Mana Hogs, are really going to like... or they really like that rune in general. So like, this will be a nerf to them. I don't think it's going to be a huge deal, but maybe it is. I don't know. We'll see. Stopwatch. They're nerfing this several times, which I really like. That item is obnoxious, particularly on certain champions. It just, I don't know. It's cool that there is like an outplay potential to it, and it is kind of like a higher skill bracket item, because a lot of people screw it up and just die anyways after their stopwatch, but I like that they're kind of nerfing that. Part of that's biased because I don't play champions that get stopwatch a lot. But the perfect timing nerf is the more telling one. So the extra 50, if you want to naturally buy a stopwatch, I think that's a little bit less oppressive because you are paying $650 for a one-time Zhonya's. So that's probably fair. You're giving up 2 kills worth of gold, basically, in order to potentially prevent some stuff, but it's that perfect timing one where you get the free stopwatch and it reduces the cost on items like Zhonya's Hourglass and like Gargoyle Stoneplate, and it reduces the cooldown on those items. So cooldown and cost reduction on 2 powerful items on lots of champs, and you get a free one, the free 600 gold value here. So they're making it 14 minutes, reduced by 2 minutes per takedown. So in professional play, it's a massive nerf. And like something like Silver, if you're playing something where it gets a lot of kills, it's not going to be like that bad. It still might be doable. If you think you can get 2 kills by 10 minutes, 2 kills or assists, it's takedowns. So 2 kills or assists by 10 minutes, and you're going to get it about at the same time. It's actually possible to get it faster if you're really snowballing. Because you could get it like as low as 8 minutes if you get, you know, you invade and you kill 3 people on the enemy team or get 3 assists. You could get it as low as 8 minutes, but I think most of the time it's a nerf. Especially at higher elo brackets, and then remove the cooldown reduction on GA, Stoneplate, and Zhonya's. So overall, I think that's a good buff. I think this item is a little bit too strong on, particularly on some champs that are really popular right now, like Echo, and then the Leona, and I think Nautilus was really starting to take Gargoyle Stoneplate too. So being able to get like free boots and this free stopwatch was a little strong in inspiration. So because those secondary runes are just so valuable. You know, you're getting the 650, or it used to be a 600 gold value off of this normally, and then it also reduced by an extra 200 gold, and you got the cooldown reduction on it. It was just a little much. It was a lot of value for a secondary rune, especially considering you could get boots, which are worth like 350 out of that too. Like guaranteed value that's not really gonna, is not contingent on a lot of stuff. So I like that change overall. Unflinching now grants 10% slow resistance per summoner spell. Okay, so I guess that was messed up. Now it works. Okay, you still take that sometimes. It's okay. That's a little bit of help to some of the tanks that want to take that, like your Leona, your Nautilus, things like that. So that's all right. Jace Q buff. I don't like buffing his damage early because I think at really high low brackets and like in professional play, he can be very strong early on, especially on you know, really aggressive, notorious, like top laners that are good with him. But I do like the damage later on. The 35 extra damage later is good, and especially because that's what he maxes first. He's going to be able to get this at, like, you know, level 9. It's going to be maxed out. So I don't know if that's going to completely bring him into the meta. I think they need to give him something where when he goes into melee combat, he gets some kind of defensive steroid or something to make him more viable. Or, I don't know, maybe with the Shock Blast gate, it could amplify the damage a little bit on the acceleration gate so that he could turn into a poke champion later on. I'm not really sure what to do about Jace. The problem with him is he can be so strong when he's ahead and so oppressive early game. So I would look at nerfing his early game a little bit more and giving him more power late, either tankiness in team fights or, like I said, just turning him into some kind of poke mage. Because Jace's problem is that later on in the game, he's squishy, and he doesn't offer a lot of CC, so he just really can't do anything in a lot of team fights, or it's very difficult for him to do things in like an even team fight. And then usually he can't split push that well later on against a lot of the other top end top laners unless he's absurdly ahead. So good buff to him, I guess, but it's a little dangerous. It's not the right kind of buff. Okay, Gnar. So they really want Gnar to be a thing. They have buffed Gnar several times. He's the type of champ that they want to be in the top lane, who's kind of like a bully early on, but can serve as kind of an engage, you know, off-tank type of champ later. So his movement speed is 335 in Mega Gnar form. And his R bonus AD ratio goes from 20% to 50%. That's a very large jump if he does get a decent chunk of AD. I think he almost always gets Cleaver, and then I don't know after that. Might be Death's Dance. I don't think he can get Sterix because he's ranged. I'm not really sure. I'm not a Gnar expert, obviously, but that's definitely going to be good because he does buy mostly AD type of items. Now, they're giving him 100% AP ratio on the R, which is pretty interesting. I don't know what his other AP ratios are. Let me just look at him real quick. I know I said I was going to make this fast, but I'm just kind of curious now. That's such a weird buff to buff his AP ratio. Because I don't think he has... His hyper might have a ratio on it. It actually does. Whoa, what? Hold on. Every third attack on the same target within 3.5 seconds deals magic damage and grants him bonus movement speed. Really? 100% AP ratio on his hyper? What? Dude. Is this going to be AP Gnar? They're changing this to 100% also. On the Mega Gnar, like, wall slam. Huh. This is max health. Nashor's Tooth Gnar? Is that what I'm reading? So, like, Cleaver, Tooth. Maybe just Rush Tooth. So yeah, he obviously really wants a lot of attack speed to trigger Hyper a lot when that's going on. And that would give him, like, a pretty good amount of burst. I'm trying to think of what else. Because he doesn't use mana, so, like, AP items without mana, it's basically Tooth. I think he might run Tooth now as an item. I don't know what else he would get that could be... I mean, he could run, like, Ginsu's, like Tooth Ginsu's or something like that. That would be a little goofy. I don't know if it would trigger this twice or not. Every third attack on the same target deals bonus magic damage and grants Gnar. I think a lot of times he goes Blather and King, maybe. Blather and King does have synergy with Tooth. Gains a lot of bonus movement speed that decays over 3 seconds. Is there an on-target? I don't think there's an on-target cooldown with this. And then he's got his Hop on a fairly low cooldown, and then his Mega Gnar. Now, what's the... Did these have... Okay, so these do not have AP ratios on them, though. It's just... Okay. But this, a lot of times, he doesn't do a ton of damage in this form, I don't think. Like, unless he's going in and then slamming them with Mega Gnar, hitting them with the Crunch, and, like, the Wallop. I mean, so sometimes you do this, but I think most of the time you're going to want to be in Mini Gnar form. That's interesting. Because I did not realize that Hyper had a 100% AP ratio, so that's going to create some weird builds. So, like I said, Nasher almost certainly seems like that's going to happen. But then I don't know what else, other than Ginsu's, that doesn't have mana on it. So, you know, it might just be Nashers, like Nasher, Blather and King, Cleaver, or something like that. I'm not sure. Rory, if you demonetize me with that, I'm taking it out of your allowance. Rory, you get one thing. You can have the TV or you can have the phone. You can't have both. Which one do you want? Anyways, Garen. Okay, so that's interesting. That's a bit more interesting than I thought it was going to be. And it gets a little bit more movement speed there. So that might bring Gnar back, as strange as that sounds. Because it's a lot easier to dominate with, like, Mini Gnar during the laning phase. That's easier for players in solo queue to understand than, like, setting up perfect, like, teleport flanks with Mega Gnar for, like, a huge engage. Like, that's really more of a pro thing where you're on comms, you're managing your TPs properly, you're managing your waves properly, your support sets up a flank ward for you. You know, that requires a lot more prep, and that's why Gnar historically hasn't been that great in solo queue unless he's absolutely, like, busted in pro play. But that little change there with the Nasher's Tooth, like, giving the AP ratio, that's a solo queue thing, right? That's going to be a lot better in solo queue where people can go for those kind of, like, goofy, lane dominant sort of builds. I don't know how much y'all can hear. You can probably hear it pretty well. Tumbleweed. Can you take that in the other room real quick? I'll be in there in just a second, okay? And we'll watch some Tumbleweed, and we'll eat some blueberries, okay? Or you want to sit on your chair over there? Hopefully that's not too loud. She'll get mad if I turn it down. Rory, you just watch in the other room? I'll be in there just a second, okay? You want to turn it down? You don't want this anymore? You want to watch Tumbleweed? Is that what it is? You want Tumbleweed? Okay, give me... Jesus, just give me 1 second. Fast forward through this real quick. Let me just turn this on. I was hoping she'd give me 5 minutes. Okay, come on. I'm just turning on a cartoon for her. Alright, sorry about that, guys. We just gotta try to power through this, because I'm trying to get this content out for you guys. Anyways, I didn't get to make it yesterday. I know a lot of people were asking, and I've got to take care of her all day, so this is just the only time I'm going to have to make this. I know people will keep asking about it and want to know what I think about it, so anyways. So I can't restart, because if I do, she's just going to come in another, like, 15 minutes or whatever. So we'll just have to power through. So I know that's weird. I don't have any editing. Whatever. Sorry. Okay. So Garen gets an extra 80 ratio on his Q. Max stacks grant 10% bonus armor and magic resist. W shield is 10% max HP. Now, I thought they were giving him, like, where his E does extra damage to minions and monsters. Okay, that's down here. Okay, so they're making... we'll talk about the jungle changes here in a second. So I guess, I don't know, we kind of had the terror of Garen in during the preseason, where he was just too strong. I don't like Garen being viable above, like, silver or gold, maybe. He's so easy to play, and he's just so brain dead. I don't know. I don't like him, but they want him to be a thing in higher elo brackets, I guess, or at least kind of mid-tier, like your gold, your plat, maybe low diamond, that type of stuff. So, okay, I mean, it's obviously a buff. The extra 10% max HP on the shield is huge, because he does get quite a lot of HP. And then, yeah, they're changing it to 70 to 110. Or it's not 10% of max anymore. It's 70 flat plus 170. So that's going to make him stronger early. 20% bonus. I'm not sure what that's trying to do. I don't know. I don't know the math on that exactly. I'm sure it seems like it's probably intended to be a buff, though. So he gets bonus armor and magic resist at maximum stacks of W. So that's going to help him out later in the game. I think the W is going to be much stronger later in the game, because 10% max, if you have like 3,000 HP, would be 300, and then 170 plus 20% bonus HP, even if you only have 1,000 bonus HP, would give you 370. So I think it's more, but just barely later on with the W if you're getting a lot of health. This is definitely a buff. And then the 80 ratio on the Q, your strike, is good. I mean, he doesn't get a ton of AD typically, but he can. He's kind of got some weird builds. Like, usually it's Trinity, and then either, like, Ghostblade or Sterix, and then, like, some defensive items. So, small buffs. I don't think it's a huge deal. I think the jungle thing could be a big deal. 150% damage off of his E to jungle camps could be a big deal, but this by itself, not a huge deal. Okay, they're buffing Silas. I feel like I've seen several Silases that are pretty good in my game, so I don't know. I guess at max rank, the Q, I think people are still maxing Q right now on him and just turning him into like a burst mage type of champ. That's what I've seen. So they're giving it 120 damage. Now, this can hit twice also. So, okay, sure. I think he's got a fairly low play rate, so that's fine. He's an interesting champion. I don't mind him being in the meta. Attack speed doesn't matter. Because, like, the base attack speed is good, but the problem is, that's what base... Why does it say attack speed ratio? That's what base attack speed is, usually. I mean, I guess maybe for some champs it's different. The problem is he doesn't get a lot of attack speed, so it's like it helps him out early, but it's not like he's going to be getting, like, Static Shiv or something, unless it's like a troll build. I don't think. I mean, maybe if he goes for the jungle item that has the extra, like, damage, or, like, the attack speed, the 50% attack speed and on-hit damage, but I think that item's pretty troll. I think he almost always goes Cinder Hulk, but maybe you go for that build if you want to try to take Barons or Dragons faster, have higher single target damage. I don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's not going to fix some of his problems. His problem is he's just outdated. He just doesn't do that much that's unique or cool that other junglers can't do. Like, he was strong in a time where it was hard to gank early on, because people would just have wards everywhere, and there were no blast plants, and every champion didn't have 5 dashes. So he was actually the premier early game like terror, you know, in like season 2 or season 3. He was up there. You know, people would actually ban him out a lot in solo queue, especially at gold and lower, because it was just so difficult to deal with his gank pressure. Because your laners, also your supports and your AD carries, they didn't have as many dashes either back then, and so he was just a lot more punishing. But now there's so many champions that can gap close so easily. There's blast plants. There's so many mechanics that, you know, allow people to get ganks off. Vision is very limited in the early game, so now other junglers can gank too. That's his problem. He's just really out of date. Okay, Udyr gets 5% off of his global cooldown when he switches stances for Cloud Dragon buff. Okay, doesn't matter. Udyr, he's like okay in lower brackets, especially because he does farm really well. He does take objectives really well, and he duels people in the jungle really well. He can split push really well too, but the problem is if you have a split pushing jungler, you're opening up Baron later on in the game if you don't have teleport, which he's almost never going to have teleport unless he goes Unsealed Spellbook or something, which would be really weird. So, anyways, I don't think that's going to matter too much. Okay, Amumu's Q dash speed is faster. I like that. He gets to the target. There's less opportunities for counterplay, so that's nice. R stops dashes. Okay, so if someone's mid-dash, when he sends his R off, it stops him cold. I like that. And then the R cooldown's down to 130 at early levels. I really like that, too. So these are some nice buffs for Amumu. I don't think he's necessarily going to be, like, super great right now. But with the Bomby changes to help out his clear a little bit in the mid-game, and then, like, some of his R stuff, he is an interesting AoE teamfight AP champion, and there are not a ton of those. There's, like, Gragas. Maybe Zac. So there's some. So I don't think this is necessarily going to make him great at higher elo brackets. What do you want, Rory? You hanging out? Oh, hey. Don't step on the backpack, please. There's a laptop in there. What do you want? She says, I just want to hang out with you, Dad. We'll hang out in just a second, okay? What do you... You chew on the bar? Oh, that's pretty cool, isn't it? You want to go in there and play with that? It's pretty fun. Yeah. Yeah, wow. Oh, don't, be careful. Don't drop it. It's a baby monitor. Okay, keep going. My room. It's your room. That's right. Go check it out. And the door. And it is the door. That's right. We'll play here in just a second, okay? We're going to eat some lunch.
Dad saying hi.
You saying hi?
Yes, she's waving.
Okay. She says hi to everybody. So, yeah, good changes on Amumu. I mean, he's not got a terrible win rate. I don't know what it is offhand. I feel like it's probably close to 50%. Could pull this up real quick. I feel like it's pretty close to 50%, though. Usually I like to do like a little split screen and look at stats and stuff, and I'm trying to go faster. Yeah, it's 51%, so not that bad. So, okay, nice. I like the changes. Caitlyn, level 1, she gets 10% bonus attack speed, then she's going to 20%. Doesn't really matter that much. Attack speed doesn't matter in the early game, and this isn't going to scale. Like, it's her base attack speed that's the problem, and she has a 0.56 base, kind of like what they changed with Rammus here. The reason that matters is the base is what determines how much benefit you get out of attack speed items, right? So, for instance, you have a 1.0 base attack speed, which no one has. If you have that and you get 20% attack speed, right, from an item, then you're going to get 20% attack speed out of the item, exactly what it says. It's a 1.0 ratio. But if you have a 0.5 attack speed ratio, then you're only getting 10% attack speed out of that 20% attack speed item. So Caitlyn has a 0.56, I believe, attack speed, which is extremely slow, which means that Zeal items are really bad on her for the most part. So things like Rapid Fire Cannon, like Static Shiv. She still gets Rapid because of the range and the on-hit bonus, but a lot of things that are attack speed are just not going to scale super well on her. And that's why she has traditionally had that weakness in the early game where she'll get her Infinity Edge, she's strong in the laning phase, but then when she gets those Zeal items, she gets a lot weaker, and then later on in the game, you know, when she gets another AD item, like a Bloodthirster or something like that, Storm Razor, she's stronger. Now, she has been a bit stronger at certain points in the preseason and in the early season because she could go Infinity Edge into Storm Razor and just not buy many attack speed items, just get two like pretty heavy hitting AD items. that have good synergy with each other. But the problem is they've nerfed Storm Razor several times, and they nerfed Crit Cloak. This is also why the Crit Cloak build was so strong on her, is because she really doesn't want attack speed anyways, but they nerfed that out. So she used to just get Infinity Edge and like 3 Crit Cloaks. So yeah, this is not helping what her problem is. I mean, really, the true problem of Caitlyn is she's just too hard for most people to play. A lot of her power is budgeted towards, like, using your headshot mechanic really well, using the auto attack timers, getting your combos with stepping on traps, you know, comboing that together with, like, auto attack, net backwards, get an additional auto attack, like, buffer your Q while you're going backwards. There are a lot of little mechanics with Caitlyn that most Caitlyn just don't do. People just play her as a worse version of Jinx, where you just hang out, chill, farm, and auto attack occasionally. And that's just terrible because she's not that great in team fights. She doesn't have any AoE abilities. She's not that great in all-ins because her ult really only functions if you're winning the fight and they're running away and someone doesn't block it. So she's okay, but people asked me also in my last tier list, why was Caitlyn not even on it? And the reason is, like, Senna's just a way better version of Caitlyn. Caitlyn has all these problems. Senna's much easier to play. She actually hits way harder. She has better itemization, better utility. There's just really no reason to play Caitlyn unless you're just a god on her and, you know, play all of her mechanics correctly. So she's one of the hardest ADCs to play correctly. And a lot of people, it's deceptive because a lot of people think she isn't. They just think she's an auto attacker. So that's why a lot of Caitlyn's fail. Anyways, Lux support. Okay, so Q damage going up a little bit. All right. Q cooldown is going down to 11 seconds early on. That's what matters because that's what you max last. So, like, basically you're getting 10 extra damage and 2 seconds off. So that's okay. I don't think it's going to be enough to bring her back in. The thing that made Lux support really unique and interesting is that she was a poke champion who could use the Aftershock really well. So it was hard to all-in her because, and her W shield used to be obnoxiously powerful too. And they nerfed the daylights out of that. It used to have, like, triple scaling or something on it. It was insane. Like, you were just giving people, like, entire health bars of shield, AoE in fights, and you shielded yourself for, like, 1 billion, too. So what would happen is if someone tried to engage on her with Leona or Nautilus, she could Q them and then pop the shield on herself, and it would, like, give her a small shield at first, and when it came back, it'd give her a huge shield. So it's just really hard to burst through her. And she had good early game poke, but then just a massive shield later on. Because I got asked about this. People were saying, is this going to bring her back? Like, why do people not play Lux anymore? And the thing is, she just got nerfed out back then. I mean, I got to Diamond last May off of the back of playing Lux support. Played Karma and Lux support when they were really strong for those couple of patches there. But they've nerfed Aftershock, so it's not as good on squishy champions anymore. And they ended up changing something. No longer doubles the shield strength on return. So that basically cut 30% off of the shield, and the duration was reduced. Now, she did get a bigger AP ratio, but that doesn't matter. You don't get a ton of AP as support. And they got rid of the refund on her final spark, and they reduced the AP ratio. So they just nerfed her a ton on 9.14, pretty much. So that's basically it. So I don't think this fixes it. I don't think it's going to bring her back. She was just like a really, like, interesting, like, snapshot champion that was just a really good call on the meta at the time that was abusing certain mechanics in the game. Okay, Kayle, our cast time on allies, 0.25 seconds. That's basically instant on allies. That's actually really important. I feel like Kayle is not that bad right now, honestly. I think she's a pretty good pick into Ornn in the top lane, who's really popular in Pro. And is becoming more popular in solo queue too, although I think a lot of people are not that great on Ornn in solo queue. She's got a 52% win rate though right now, and I think she's got really good matchups against tanks or just anything that's not going to bust her up early on. So I think that's pretty dangerous. That makes her a lot better at team fighting. It's just like basically insta ult on somebody. So I think Kayle's pretty scary. That might make her top tier, top laner. They're pretty close, especially if they nerf Set a little bit more. Like, they already nerfed him quite a lot. He's down to 52% win rate now from 57. I honestly didn't think it was going to be that big of a nerf on him, but yeah, watch out for Kayle because that might be for real. And a lot of that's going to be she's already strong. People just aren't playing her or thinking about it, so it could be a placebo buff. as LS likes to say. But I think that actually can be a real buff too, because I mean, getting that instacast where they, there's virtually no counterplay is very strong. Okay, so Soraka is an entirely separate thread. We'll look at that at the very end of the video because they have a tweet on it right below. Basically, it's a pretty much a gut on Soraka. It's gonna crush her. Not only top lane, but probably a support too. So we'll go over those details here in a few minutes. I know we're a bit over time. Whatever, we'll just keep going. Okay, Sona. Now this is elegant or eloquent, elegant. I guess why not? Why not both? This is a good way to do it, right? Is her mana cost is higher for the first cast, but then if you touch an ally with the aura, then you get refunded 30 mana. So that's gonna kill top Sona, which I don't even think is that good, honestly. I think it's really overblown, like a bunch of challengers talking about how it's OP right now. I really don't think it's that great, especially under challenger. It's a really weird playstyle where basically you just roam a lot after giving up a bunch of CS and using Frostfang early on. It's a bizarre playstyle where you would get reported for trolling if you're like in silver trying to do that. But it's one that's not going to nerf her support that much, or her support role that much. It might actually be a little bit better. Now, the one thing is the upfront cost is going to be absurdly high, though. So if you're low on mana, if it's like one of your last couple of casts, this could matter. But if you have quite a bit of mana, then you are saving 5 per cast. So your Q is going to cost 25 extra mana per your Q, your W, and your E. Actually, the E, that's a pretty big nerf. Because you use that to, like, rotate between lanes, and you're not going to be touching an ally with that a lot of times. I guess if you're rotating with your, like, ADC or something, maybe, but that actually is a pretty big nerf to the E. I didn't think about that, because you're not going to touch people with that aura on a rotation a lot of times. So, but you're only pressing it once or twice in those situations. I don't know. But like in the laning phase, getting 5 back on the Q, because the Q is already pretty cheap. I think it starts at 50 and goes up 5 per. So you can actually harass pretty well and save 5 mana on that early on with your ally. So it is a nerf, but she'll still be okay in the support role, I think. But yeah, like mid or top lane, that's going to be rough. Okay, so you can see, okay, Aphelios is just a monstrosity of a champion. They just, like, the biggest thing about him is that his other guns apply offhand stuff. So that's where the broken things come in, is because you can do things like Flamethrower and have your Gravitum. I see this a lot in Pro. You can hit the wave with Flamethrower. It splashes back. If your Gravitum is the secondary weapon, it'll splash the Gravitum little orbs. And if one of those orbs touches the enemy, then he can switch guns, activate the Gravitum, and that's going to do the 1-second root on him. And that's a perfect setup for the support to go in and kill him. So a play that I saw this on was somebody was just flamethrowing. They did it a couple of times normally just to throw the enemy off in a pro game. Then all of a sudden, like, they had their Gravitum gun. They got the Gravitum on the flamethrower. You know, it hit the normal wave, splashed back, however long it splashed, barely touched the ADC. Then he switched, rooted him, and then the Thresh, like, flashed in, flayed, hooked, and the person was dead. So you see that a lot with the Gravitum, or if you have like the sniper rifle that also has the Gravitum, you can engage from long range, or of course the ultimate that has like 1,000,000 range where you can Gravitum the whole team. So that's the biggest abuse case that I see. Or something like the turret with the flamethrower. He just does too many things. So I think they should take off the offhand ammo application on his abilities. I think that's what it should be. It's like, okay, if they have a flamethrower, you're dealing with the flamethrower unless they switch their gun, right? It shouldn't be like, okay, you're dealing with a flamethrower and the stun at the same time, or you're dealing with the turret and the flamethrower at the same time. I think that's what starts getting really OP and difficult to predict. So that's the big thing that I see about Aphelios, is there's so many just little bizarre interactions that can be like really OP. He just has too much utility. So now the Caligram Mark grants 1 auto attack reset. Okay, I like changes like that because that nerfs Pro without nerfing solo queue too much. I didn't even know he had 2 resets on that, but I guess he does. Turrets attack 3 times instead of 4. Okay, that's good. That the turret is really, really strong in team fights, so that's nice. Turret damage. Okay, so the turrets can actually die a lot faster. and the R range is lower from 1600 to 1300. Now, Aphelios, I believe in solo queue, he's only got a 50% win rate. He's just too strong in pro. So I think these are steps in the right direction that are pretty good. Nerfing the turret, nerfing the range on the R. So good changes. He'll probably get nerfed again a few more times. Okay, Singed, 610 to 580. Okay, I don't know why they're nerfing Singed so much. Is his win rate really that out of control? I mean, I think he's all right now, but maybe they think he's suppressing tanks too much. I mean, he does have a 54% win rate, so I suppose. Fine. He's a rare champ. Not a lot of people play him. Speaking of rare champs, why are you nerfing Aurelion Sol? Like, he's an interesting champion that nobody plays. Like, he's unique. I don't know. I guess he does have a 56%. He just has to be balanced around one tricks, I suppose, because he has no pro presence. Like, he has to be one of the lowest played champs in the whole game, right? I mean, what's his pick rate? Yeah, like, probably top 15 lowest played champs in the game. Okay, I guess the one tricks are too strong. Okay, the jungle stuff. Now, this is some of the more interesting things they've done in a while, I think, as far as balance, is they're trying to put more champions in the jungle, which I think is a nice sort of olive branch towards junglers. I personally don't think that jungle is, like, a problem right now. I think it's actually balanced. I think it was too OP last season. So I think it's balanced. And they did add in more jungle experience back on the last patch. If you go and look, now check this out. It's a bit of an older video right now, but go look at a Mobalytics video. I don't remember what it was titled, but it was basically looking at the ranks of challengers, like the rank distribution of challengers. And in every single region, jungler was the most represented in the top 50 champions in challenger right now. So I think in EU, it was like 16 of the 50 champions. And then in North America and Korea, it was a bit closer. It was like maybe 12 of the 50 champions in those regions. So there's a little bit more balance there, but every single time it was the number one represented in the top 50 challenger. So it's good. Jungler's still good. Jungle still has like pretty good win rates. It's just kind of like ADC-itis, what happened in 2008, where everybody was crying about ADC being terrible once they changed the meta around and made mages in the bot lane really strong. There were still several ADCs that were very good in that meta. Like, I remember Lucian had a really high win rate. I think Ezreal had a high win rate, and there were a couple of others. So there were like 3 or 4 ADCs that were still good down there, but there were also mages. You would see Cassiopeia, you would see Vladimir, and things like that. But people just lost their mind, and everyone complained it was terrible and blah, blah, blah. So it was just the public perception of it was really bad. And I think that's what's happening with jungle right now, is there are a ton of people just constantly complaining about jungle, especially challengers and pro player commentators are sometimes complaining about it. But in reality, like, there are several junglers that are still like a pretty good win rate, right? I mean, look at this. Look at how many champions there are before you get to 50%, right? That's like, I don't even know. Was that like 30 champions? They're all at 50% or higher? Maybe even more, right? So they're complaining about that, right? But if you start going to, I guess ADC has some pretty deep list too. I feel like there's less diversity in ADC and in support than there is in the jungle. Like, look at the support. We're already at 50% here. So I think jungle is the third most diverse role outside of like mid and top are obviously going to be the most diverse role. But I think jungler is the third most diverse. There's a lot of different champions that are good. Shaco's primarily AP. He can be played AD. Shyvana's AP. Then you have Yi. You've got like a tank breaker with Trundle. You have the tanks with Volibear, Warwick, Maokai, Nunu. You've got assassins with Kha'Zix. Vi's basically an assassin. Early game powerhouse champs like your Rek'Sai. You got Ivern in there as kind of your support jungler. Like, there's a lot of different kinds of champs that are good there right now. So, you know, a lot of junglers complain like, oh, I can't kill the solo laner anymore. It's like, you shouldn't be able to kill the solo laner because you have a lot more roaming potential than they do. You can completely take over the game by yourself as the jungler through your ganks, right? You can decide, hey, that top laner can't play the game, and you can just sit in the bush top lane if you want and completely take them out of the game. Like, no other role has that kind of influence early on that the jungler has. By far, unequivocally, the most control over the early game is the jungler, and it almost always is. So they should be weaker late because they have so much power early. It seems fair, I think. But a lot of junglers are like, oh, we get outscaled, we fall behind 3 or 4 levels by 35 minutes into the game. It's like, yeah, you should. You should be giving all of your farm over to the mid laner, the top laner, the ADC, like these other carry type of champs that scale much better later on in the game. They should take all of your jungle later on. So I don't know. I think it's unfounded. Personally, I see junglers take over the game all the time. I still think it's probably the second most influential role in solo queue outside of mid lane. I think a lot of people who are being honest about it, especially people that aren't junglers, are gonna agree with that. So I don't know. Anyways, that's end rant about jungle. I think it's fine, but I think the perception's really bad. But I do like that they are increasing the diversity, so this should make it more fun and interesting for people to want to play the jungle. It has taken a hit to numbers. Jungler is, one of the least picked roles, depending on the stats you look at. I know Amir on the channel has claimed jungle is the least picked role. We've looked at League of Graphs, and I had this discussion with him forever about it, where support was actually the least picked role by still a couple of percentage points. But either way, those two are going to be the least picked roles, and so they're wanting more people to start picking jungler to get out of that bad perception. So they're adding a bunch of cool new things to different junglers, especially junglers that can be considered carry junglers, to try to make people happy. So either way, I think more diversity is good, even if it's for placebo type of reasons. Okay, so Darius, Q works on monsters. The bleed is 120% to monsters. I think this is really nice. That's going to give him a lot of sustain, and that's going to allow him to start taking, especially some of those big camps, like your blue buff, your red buff, stuff like that. They're going to bleed out a lot faster, and that bleed might actually do some decent damage to Baron as well. Now, I don't know if that's capped against minions and monsters. I don't guess it's a percentage, but I think this could be good. And Darius would be like a really good duelist in the jungler. So you could go and invade and potentially kill most other enemy junglers if you can find him. The problem, though, is he's not really going to have a way to gap close. I guess he can take Ghost. He could take Smite Ghost. That might actually be kind of spooky in the jungle. So we'll see. But it is dangerous to invade because you don't have any escapes. You have no mobility. So a jungler with, pretty much no mobility, but really high damage, great dueling potential and great teamfight potential, could be pretty good. So I think it's interesting to throw him into the jungle, sure. And he's tank-ish. You notice a lot of these champs, or at least several of them they're throwing in there, are like tanks, but they're not like the super unkillable CC bot tanks, like the Sejuani, the Zax, things like that. They want stuff that has more carry potential, but also potentially has more counterplay potential later on in the game, right? Where you can actually kill these champions in a lot of circumstances, versus something like Sejuani is just going to be almost impossible to kill. Okay, Garen, 150% damage to monsters. Same deal as Darius. I mean, I think that Garen was already close to being viable jungler because he gets so much free sustain, because they changed it to where jungle monsters don't stop his passive anymore. So I think that's pretty good. But yeah, the E dealing 150% to monsters, he's just going to plow right through those raptors and the wolves. So I think that's pretty good. I like the change. I think it's good. Once again, kind of like Darius, I'm not sure if we're going to see him. He might be able to duel in the jungle, but he has no CC. At least Darius has a grab and a crippling strike. So I don't really know with Garen what's up. They did change his AD ratio on his Q. Maybe he can take Warrior and be all right in the jungle. I'm not really sure. It's interesting. He doesn't take dragons or barons fast at all, but he can duel, and he does do a lot of damage, and he is tanky. So I don't know. We'll see. Interesting choice, maybe for solo queue. I don't think we're going to see either one of them in pro. Talon, passive, works on large monsters and deals 120% damage. That's interesting, trying to make Talon a jungler now. I mean, he does have Rake, which does a lot of AoE. If that bleed damage you know, can clear Gromp and Blue really fast. Maybe that makes him a bit more viable. I've never really thought of Talon as a jungler, but that's interesting. Because he can jump over walls, obviously, so that, you know, that's really good, like, interesting creative pathing. He does have the invisibility with his ult, so he's kind of like a Kha'Zix, but Kha'Zix is almost certainly going to shred camps faster than he does with, like, the Q spam, and definitely Dragons and Baron. So, I don't know. It's interesting. That's an interesting move there. We'll see. I've never thought of Talon that way, but maybe that makes it more viable. Now, the Diana passive damage increased to 150% on monsters. That's pretty huge, because I feel like Diana's already, like, okay in the jungle. You know, she's got her jump. She's got some gap closers. She scales really well. So, I feel like Diana's already, like, pretty decent in the jungle. Maybe not. Maybe that's an illusion. It's 46%. Okay, so maybe she could use a little bit of help. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But I think she has the kind of kit that could make her good in the jungle, in theory. Although her early game's probably going to be pretty suspect. Mordekaiser, his passive max damage against monsters is higher. Now, he was played in the jungle for a little bit, but they nerfed some stuff about him. So, he does have a lot of AoE damage, so maybe we could see him in the jungle. Would be pretty good on ganks. He can force that 1v1 with his ult. He did get nerfed. Really? There's no data for him. Nobody plays him in the jungle? No one's even trying? Okay. I thought he was played in the jungle when he came out a little bit, but I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe it's not enough, but could be interesting. Mini Gnar, the W, the Hyper again, is dealing 300 damage at all times to monsters. I mean, they really want Gnar to be a thing. Now, in the jungle, you could actually take the on-hit or whatever, that the Blood Razor on him. So if you take Blood Razor and get something like Nashor's Tooth, like, that could actually do a lot of damage. As a ranged champion, Blood Razor, Nashor's Tooth, Gensu's or something like that, that could be pretty gross with how much damage you're cranking out. And you'd be Mega Gnar so often, because I think that, doesn't his Gnar bar, it like charges based on how many autos he lands, right? Or something like that. It's like movement plus autos. So he would get a lot of Gnar transformations in the jungle, which heals you. I'm pretty sure you get to keep that health. I don't remember. I'm not a Gnar expert, but I believe that you get to keep at least some of that health whenever you transform. So if you're auto-attacking, like, super fast, bonus movement speed in Mini Gnar. Wow, I didn't realize he got bonus movement speed in Mini Gnar. Attack speed. He generates over 2 seconds upon dealing or receiving damage. Okay, so it just refreshes. So if you have a ton of attack speed, it's not going to be like you you know, transform constantly. Okay, so it's kind of capped. But still, like, that's a lot. And, I mean, I think that could actually start shredding Baron, like, really fast. I mean, it's 14% of the target's maximum health, and it's capped at 300 now against Baron and Blue. I mean, he's going to tear through that jungle. And Baron and Dragon. And just people in team fights off of that Mini Gnar. Now, what's his range? His auto attack range is pretty low, right? 400. Yeah, so it's pretty low. But I don't know. That's an interesting adjustment. It's an interesting adjustment. So we'll see. Maybe Gnar in the jungle. Maybe Gnar in the... I mean, that's going to be some damn fast clear, I think, with that. Especially level 1. Like, being able to do, like, 300 damage to Blue, because it's max health, not current health. We'll see. We'll see. It's definitely interesting, but I think, you know, especially with the Blood Razor and being able to take Nashor's and then going something like Gensu's after that, he could be basically like a carry out of the jungle that just happens to be able to initiate fights as well with his ult. So it'll be some interesting choices. Obviously, all of that attack speed when he's in Mega Gnar form is not going to be as useful. So you might actually want to not... Like, you might want to exhaust your Mega Gnar before you start a fight if you go for that and you have some other engage on your team. And then you can roll up and make sure that you don't transform during a fight. If you just want to keep the hyper cranking out. So, we'll see. Okay, so these were the changes that Soraka that we talked about earlier. Base health. Okay, so base stat changes that don't matter that much. Mana per level going down is kind of rough, but everything else doesn't really matter. Now, what does matter here is they're lowering the ratio by 0.2 on the Star Call, which is a huge nerf, and they're lowering the base heal by 60. You got to remember, this heal is not only for you, but it's also the heal that gets transferred over to your allies. That's 60 less for you and 60 less on them. That's 120. That's insane. Now the Rejuvenate does heal up faster, so it's 2.5 seconds, which is good, but you already got a lot of the heal anyways, like up front in the first 2 seconds. They changed that to where a lot of it was front-loaded. So that is a colossal nerf, both to top lane Soraka and to support Soraka, because once again, it's not only self-healing on like you, but it's also healing on your ally. And then you have the mana cost increase by 50% early on, which is massive. And then the movement speed is also nerfed by quite a bit. It's like, really? Did you have to nerf it like 4 different ways? The ratio, the base on the Q, the mana cost, and the movement speed? Was it that like catastrophic? You can't just nerf like, why don't you just start with this right here, since this is like devastating, and just go from there? I don't know, but they nerfed that. They're increasing the base heal on the W by 20, but that, I mean, that's okay, but that doesn't matter. Like, you're losing 60 off of this, and you're gaining 20, but now when you're rejuvenated, the health cost is reduced by a lot, so you're not hurting yourself as much whenever you're damaging or whenever you're healing other people, which is good. I mean, that does help you out by a decent chunk, but I think that's a huge nerf. So we'll see. I think that's going to nerf Soraka at like 7% or something like that. I mean, maybe I'm being a little too alarmist, but I think that's kind of nailing the coffin for Soraka a lot of times. Pretty much just play Sona instead of Soraka is pretty much what if you want that type of champion, is what this is saying. So the real winner in all of this is probably Janna. Is sort of the premier peeler champ who's already like pretty good win rate wise. Already is like innately like pretty good against you know, things like, or Lulu's another big winner if you want somebody who's going to be able to like protect and buff up your allies. I mean, all of these are basically the same win rate and support right now. Like, they're very close, right? Like Sona's 52, and then Soraka's 53, and then all 4 of them are in the same kind of category. They're all higher than Leona, and Nautilus has almost gone negative at this point. So, we'll see. I think that's brutal, though. Soraka is definitely going south of 50, I think. But we'll see how it goes. Anyways, that's it for the video. We're about an hour in, so whatever. You know, we'll keep working on trying to get it lower. That'll be our dream. That'll be our fantasy if we can ever do a video in 20 minutes. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. Watch for the real patch notes once the actual patch comes out next Tuesday with all of the details. I'll keep you up to speed. I'll give you some more information. But anyways, that's going to be it. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.